Dear viewers, the show will begin in 2 minutes. The show will begin in 1 minute. The show is about to begin. Grab a drink, a snack, and please sit back, relax, and enjoy this show.
Please like and leave a comment, and share this video.
Welcome everybody to live show 95. Only 5 to go before our 100th. Trump's delusion, the continuing deceit. What's that we're talking about? That's talking about his Ukraine plan. So coming to you from a chilly Minsk, Belarus. As I keep saying, it's getting colder here. It's a Sunday, November 10th, 2024. I just got back from a ice hockey game. So if you're watching Telegram or X, you would have seen some clips, and tomorrow there will be a video as normal. And we're streaming live on Rumble and YouTube. Tonight's show is packed, and as I said, we discuss Trump's delusional Ukraine plan and how the EU's think this will affect Ukraine as well. The aftermath of the US election, Belarus news, UAP news, and always we'll finish with your fan favorite. You don't see that in Belarus. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and share this video. It really helps us grow and reach more viewers. Now let's get on with the show.
Could be wrong, I could be right.
So let's analyze the results of the US presidential election with key points to consider. The United States presidential election has always been a spectacle, not just domestically but globally, thanks to the perversive coverage by American media and the advent of digital technology. We even covered it on our 4-hour live show, as you could see earlier. Both major political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have leveraged celebrity endorsements. I don't think they make much difference anymore. And engaged in mutual mudslinging and branded each other with often exaggerated or derogatory labels, making the election cycle a continuous drama that captivates global audiences. This trend was no different in the latest election cycle, where the media frenzy not only included American outlets, but also foreign press, including Russian media, which sometimes sensationalized the coverage. So what are the key takeaways from the election results? 1. Trump's victory. Voter sentiment. Donald Trump's win can be seen as a direct consequence of dissatisfaction with the policies of the Biden-Harris administration. Despite a media-driven negative portrayal of Trump, the public's frustration with the current government's performance seems to have been more a decisive factor. Electoral strategy. The Biden-Harris team might have anticipated relying on swing states to secure a victory through possible controversial means like ballot stuffing, a strategy they might have reconsidered due to unexpectedly strong support for Trump in these crucial areas. The significance of the win. Trump's victory reflects more on the perceived weakness of the Democratic campaign than any resurgence in Republican strength, highlighting a broader crisis within the American electoral system where voters feel compelled to choose between the lesser of two evils. So what are the impact on the international relations? NATO and the transatlantic relations. Trump's campaign rhetoric about revaluing US commitments to NATO and criticizing European defense spending contributions has introduced uncertainty among the allies. While some of the Trump statements might be considered campaign rhetoric, they do necessitate a re-evaluation of foreign policy by European nations. Realpolitik over rhetoric. Despite Trump's less overtly anti-Russian stance, his administration is in the past not significantly altered the US's confrontational foreign policy towards Russia. The expectation is that while the tone might shift, the fundamental dynamics of US-Russian relations will remain adversarial. 3. Implications for Russia. Continuity in foreign policy for Russia. The change in US leadership does not fundamentally shift the geopolitical landscape. Both parties in the US maintain a consensus on viewing Russia as a competitor or threat. Support for Ukraine. While Trump might adjust the aid to Kiev, the underlying US policy of supporting Ukraine against Russia is likely to continue, driven by strategic interests. 4. The media and public perception. Information management. In the aftermath of the election, the influx of information, especially from US media, known as sensationalism, requires a discerning eye. It's crucial to rely on official sources for accurate information, avoiding the pitfalls of media manipulation. So what are the conclusions? The 2024 US election results underscore a broader disillusionment with the political offerings available to American voters, highlighting systematic issues within the political discourse. For international observers, particularly in Europe and Russia, while Trump's return might stir concerns of necessary strategic recalibrations, the core of the US foreign policy appears to maintain its course. As the dust settles post-election, it's advisable to approach all information with a critical eye, focusing on verified facts rather than the noise of political rhetoric. And I could be wrong, and I could be right.
I could be right.
So let's look at the legacy media's misrepresentation during the US election. The narrative surrounding the media's portrayal of Donald Trump during the election cycle reveals a complex web of motives and influences. Here are some of the reasons why many believe the legacy media might be misrepresenting the truth. 1. Profit motive. Media outlets thrive on sensationalism to boost advertising sales. Donald Trump, with his controversial persona, was inherently newsworthy, driving viewership and engagement. Look at CNN, where their ratings dropped after Trump lost the last election in 2020. The more contentious the coverage, the higher the revenue from ads, making Trump a lucrative subject regardless of accuracy. 2. Political bias. A significant portion of journalists and media personalities lean towards progressive or liberal ideologies. This bias can consciously or unconsciously, influence how stories are framed, leading to a portrayal that aligns with these viewpoints rather than maintaining traditional journalistic objectivity. 3. Geographical and ideological echo chambers. Most of the major news organizations are headquartered in urban centers like New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C., which tend to be politically homogeneous views that often skew left. This homogeneity can foster an echo chamber where alternative views, like support for Trump, are underestimated or mischaracterized. 4. Strategic political influence. There might have been an underlying strategy to shape political perception in favor of Kamala Harris. You think? I think. Similar to perceived efforts in previous elections. By presenting a scenario where Harris could win, media outlets might have hoped to influence voter turnout or sway undecided voters. 5. Alteration of reality. In the era where narrative often trumps facts, media might just adjust their reporting to fit a preferred storyline, especially when real events do not align with expectations or desired outcomes. 6. Desperation for relevance. With declining trust and viewership in the media, some media outlets could be seen as desperate to remain relevant, especially now alternative media, like this channel, is on the rise. And in this context, sensationalism or biased reporting might be used to capture audience attention. 7. External influences. Mentioning high-profile figures like Diddy and Epstein might suggest that there are other, less viable pressures or influences on media narratives, though this point remains speculative and controversial. These reasons collectively illustrate a scenario where the media's portrayal of events might not only be driven by a need for accuracy, but also by a mix of economic interests, personal bias, groupthink, strategic political goals, and possibly external pressures, like the Epstein and Diddy list. Who's on that? The discussion around why media might choose to misrepresent facts touches on broader issues about journalism's role in society and balance between informing and influencing public opinion. And let's listen to Kamala Harris as she concedes the election to Donald Trump with her usual word salad.
Of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves.
And here's what we've heard of Donald Trump's bold plan to dismantle the deep state or the machine. Here's a breakdown on Trump's strategy to overhaul the US government and eliminate entrenched corruption. 1. Reinstate presidential power. He said, I'll immediately reissue my 2020 executive order to give the president authority to remove rogue bureaucrats who work against our interests. 2. Clean house in the national security. He said, we'll purge all the corrupt players in our national security and intelligence agency. 3. Overhaul the FISA courts. The FISA courts have become so compromised that judges overlook lies in warrant applications. He said, I will reform this broken system. 4. Expose the government hoaxes. Trump said, we're going to shine a light on the abuses of power that have been ripping this country apart for years. 5. Crack down on the leakers. We'll launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with fake news outlets to spread false narratives and undermine our democracy. 6. Strengthen the Inspector Generals. I'll make every Inspector General office independent and physically separate from the departments they oversee to stop them becoming defenders of the deep state. 7. Audit the intelligence agencies. I'll ask Congress to create an independent auditing system for our intelligence agencies to prevent them from spying on American citizens or running disinformation campaigns like they did against my campaign, he said. 8. Relocate the federal agencies. We'll continue moving parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy out of Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp. 9. End the revolving door corruption. He said, I'll push to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs with companies they regulate after leaving government office. 10. Term limits for Congress. We'll push for a congressional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. But let's be real, the US deep state is huge that just won't roll over and surrender power. Trump's promise to drain the swamp and push through sweeping reforms, in reality, is he might not be able to deliver on it. And let's be honest, there's always the looming threat that he could be taken out. This is the same shadowy system that orchestrated 9/11, the same forces behind the JFK assassination. If they see Trump as a threat, they won't hesitate to eliminate him. Love him or hate him, Trump symbolizes a potential shift, a spark that's waking people up. More and more citizens are becoming aware of the fraud, the lies, the manipulation that define our so-called democracy in the United States. People are starting to see that this system is just a circus designed for the benefit of the 1%, by the 1%, keeping everyone else in the dark. But of course, here's the kicker. Trump may not be the ultimate solution, but he could be very well the catalyst for something far bigger. He could ignite a movement that even he can't control. If power generally starts shifting back to the people, we're looking at nothing short of a revolution. We could be on the brink of a paradigm shift, folks, and if that happens, it won't be just shake America. It'll ripple across the entire globe, changing the game for everyone. So is President Trump already caving into the deep state? Here's some information that we've gathered. Mike Pompeo is rumoured for the Secretary of State. Mark Rubio is rumoured for the Pentagon. Brian Hook, State Department Transition Team and Ukrainian Peace, which the plan allows for continuing US aid to Ukraine, as you'll see shortly. And Howard Lutnick leads the transition team. So is the deep state already fighting back? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. responds to remarks made by Howard Lutnick, who we just saw, Trump's transition team co-chair, who recently claimed that RFK would not be appointed as the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. The statement is simply not true. The campaign has since walked back on those comments, and Lutnick himself has retracted what he said, Kennedy emphasized. I want to be in the White House, and I've been assured that I will have a role there. My goal is to be in the position where I can be most effective in ending the chronic disease epidemic. He added confidently, if I choose to pursue the role of HHS Secretary, I believe the President would fight tooth and nail to make it happen. Previously, Lutnick had stated that RFK would not be offered a position in any Trump administration. Let's watch RFK.
Is it your understanding that you would not have an official role?
No, I don't think that's right. And the campaign has walked back some of Howard's statements there. But at this point, we are exploring a bunch of different structures. The Trump administration and the Trump team has been very, very accommodating to give me what I want. And what I want to do is what President Trump asked me to do, which is three things. One, to end the corruption and the corporate capture of these agencies so that they're serving public health interests rather than the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical companies. Number two, to restore the tradition in these agencies of gold standard, empirically based, evidence-based science and medicine that they had when I was a kid, that they were world famous for, and that they lost. And then third, to end the chronic disease epidemic, and which now disables 60% of our kids. When my uncle was president, it was 6%. and it's costing us $4.3 trillion a year, and 77% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. This is an existential threat.
Yeah.
It is
I think
5 times our military budget, and he's asked me to have measurable results within 2 years of diminishment in chronic health injuries to our kids.
Why is Howard Lutnick saying that you wouldn't have a position? Is that in the closing hours that they think that might be a negative for some voters? What's going on?
As I said, that is not true. The campaign has walked back those statements by Howard Lutnick, and he himself has disavowed those statements.
So does that mean that you think you might be the HHS secretary if former President Trump wins?
We don't know what I'm going to do. I talked to the president about it yesterday, and he asked me what I wanted, and I said, we're developing a proposal now.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether that's going to be the most effective. I want to be in the White House, and he's assured me that I'm going to have that. But I want to be in the position where I'm most effective in the chronic disease epidemic, and I'm confident that if I wanted to do a HHS secretary, the president would fight like hell to make that happen.
Okay.
And of course, this came in today after we've just done all that. Trump denies plans to invite Pompeo and Haley to join his administration. It says, I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration, which is currently in formation. I very much enjoyed and appreciate working with them previously and would like to thank them for their service to our country. Make America great again. So it looks like 2 from the deep state aren't in the administration. Scratch them off the list. And what about Trump's plans for Ukraine, where he said he'll end it in 24 hours? So here we go. According to the sources cited by the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump's advisors have proposed a plan to end the conflict in Ukraine by establishing a demilitarized zone, like North and South Korea, along the current front lines. This plan reportedly allows Russia to retain control over parts of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, as well as the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions. However, it remains unclear who would oversee the security in the demilitarized zone. Additionally, under this proposal, Ukraine would be required to abandon its aspirations to join NATO for at least 20 years. Previously, Trump's team had floated a different strategy, cutting off all US aid to Ukraine until Kiev agrees to engage in the peace talks. A source close to Trump's inner circle suggests that the real strategy is to pressure Putin into accepting a one-sided settlement, effectively leaving the fragmented Ukraine under the control of the oligarchs and nationalist factions. If Putin refuses, there's already talk of escalating the situation with direct NATO strikes in Ukraine to force him to negotiate on Western terms. Trump apparently believes he can strong-arm Putin, making it a my way or the highway deal. An insider also claims Trump harbors a deep disdain for Russia, frequently referring to the country in a derogatory term. Allegedly, Trump sees Russians, much like Hitler did, as backward and primitive. The former president is said to be motivated by desire to impress his wealthy peers, positioning himself as the new Reagan by trying to secure a win over Putin. But let's face it, Trump is outmatched on the geopolitical stage, and I'm hoping that Putin remains resolute because he certainly won't be swayed by Trump's sales tactics. The Trump camp is also reportedly focused on isolating Iran from its strategic partnerships with Russia and China, aiming to weaken their alliances. And I tend to agree with the perspective shared by this insider. Putin generally wants peace, but the West keeps mistaking his patience for weakness. But let's be clear, Putin has his breaking point, and Trump would do well not to push him there. Putin is already furious over what he perceives as the US waging proxy war against Russia in Ukraine, emphasizing, "We've never invaded America, nor do we provoke wars on their soil." And the bottom line is that Putin won't be intimidated. If NATO steps up to the involvement, the consequences could be unpredictable and catastrophic. But this is the path the US has chosen, and now we're all left to deal with the fallout. And also the West is discussing the possibility of lifting sanctions against Russia in the financial sector after Trump's victory in the US presidential election, writes the Financial Times. This morning everyone is talking about nothing but how to trade with Russia and whether sanctions will be lifted. Traders in the Western banks are suddenly wondering whether it's possible to trade in the ruble now, the newspaper quotes an unnamed portfolio manager saying. He also noted that Western banks are still using the ruble for offshore transactions. And David Sachs has tweeted that Zelensky has spurned Trump's peace plan. So let's see what Zelensky will do if Trump does pull the funding, and that if. And of course, until then, Biden can increase aid and let Zelensky even strike deep into Russia and increase the conflict. Marco Rubio says there has to be some common sense here, because right now we're funding a stalemate. Rubio emphasized that the conflict in Ukraine is a deadlock that needs to be resolved, as it's setting the country back by a century. This isn't about celebrating what Putin has done, he explained, but what we need to be realistic. It will take Ukraine 100 years to rebuild. The message is clear. The US doesn't need to be involved in Ukraine. If the US stepped back, Russia would handle the situation, and without American intervention, there likely wouldn't even be a war in Ukraine. Let's listen to him.
Here is a stalemate war, and it needs to be brought to a conclusion because that country is going to be set back 100 years. Now, that doesn't mean that we celebrate what Vladimir Putin did or are excited about it, but I think there has to also be some common sense here, and that is that right now what we are funding is a stalemate that's costing lives, and putting Ukraine, it's going to take 100 years to rebuild that poor country with everything they are facing.
Viktor Orban, Hungarian Prime Minister, said the US will withdraw from the conflict in Ukraine after Donald Trump, who won the election, takes office as president. He said, "I told you this about 2 years ago, if you remember. If you don't remember, I said it today, too." And in Finland, Finnish politician Tuomas Malalin on reports about the Trump plan to create a demilitarized zone in Ukraine and keep it out of NATO for 20 years. He said, "That won't work. The reality has changed quite a bit since 2010s. Trump should point out that Russia probably has the most effective ground forces in the world right now. It has the Trump cards in Ukraine, not the US. Basically, he needs to throw Zelensky regime under the bus to achieve peace in Ukraine." And that's right. The US should leave Ukraine, and they will leave eventually. Still in Finland, the Finnish president said Trump is already working on Ukraine to get its 1, territory back, and 2, security and security guarantees, and 3, justice for Ukraine so Russian war criminals are indicted, and also 4, reconstruction. What he did not understand from "it's not the US war" and more money for Ukraine.
Let me just ask you from your perspective, since you are a new NATO member and public opinion shifted in your country to allow you to join because of the Russian invasion of full-scale invasion of Ukraine. There is a huge debate in Washington as to what President Trump will do to resolve or to continue this, certainly American help, for Ukraine. What do you think? What do you expect? And can you pick up any slack?
Well, I think the starting point is to say that we need to work together with Ukraine. And you also have to, I think, take President Trump at face value. When he says something, he does it. And of course, he's talked a lot about getting peace done both in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And I think the window of opportunity that we have right now is from when the election result came to probably inauguration day. And then we'll see what happens. My starting point is that Zelensky will probably need 4 things. 1 is territory. 2 is security and security guarantees. Number 3 is justice, so Russian war criminals indicted. And then number 4 is reconstruction. And I'm sure that President Donald Trump elect and his administration are already working with the Ukrainians on that. And from what I understand, President Trump and President Zelensky had a phone call already yesterday.
They certainly did, and Trump has said, I can fix this war in 1 day, but he's never said who he wants to win. Yeah,
I mean, I think the starting point here is that from my perspective, at least, because the war is existential, that politically you could say that Ukraine has already won. Because you have to look at what was the aim of President Putin. It was to Russify Ukraine, it was to split Europe, split NATO, and make sure that NATO doesn't enlarge. Well, what did he get? He got a European or Euro-Atlantic Ukraine, he got a unified European Union, he got a unified transatlantic partnership, he got a rejuvenated NATO, and the icing on the cake, of course, is that Finland now doubled NATO's border with Russia. So in that sense, I would argue that politically Ukraine has already won.
And in the Czech Republic, Trump will try to end the war in Ukraine and make a deal with Putin, Czech President Petr Pavel said. According to him, the current situation in Ukraine is increasingly in Russia's favour. From the very beginning, we did not do enough. Now things are going a little better in Russia's favour than Ukraine's. And in this situation, it is difficult to motivate both sides to negotiate, he said. He said many countries were now waiting for the new US administration, hoping that Trump would make the changes he promised when he said he would end the war in 24 hours. Pavel does not think that is possible, but at the same time he believes Trump will try to end this war and make a deal with Putin. However, according to the Czech president, such an agreement would hardly be in the interest of Ukraine or Europe, since it would probably include the transfer of part of the occupied territories to Russia, and also the condition for Ukraine that it will not be able to become a NATO member for at least 20 years. As we reported, the Wall Street Journal previously reported on this scenario. And in the UK, The Guardian rag has said that London and Kiev relations deteriorated significantly since the Labour government came into power. Now Kiev is not even expecting the visit from the Prime Minister Keir Starmer if he arrives without the commitment to resupply British long-range Storm Shadow missiles, citing Ukrainian officials, according to The Guardian. Ukraine's relations with the UK have deteriorated since the Labour government came into power in July, officials in Kiev told The Guardian, expressing disappointment at the UK's failure to deliver additional long-range missiles, the publication writes. And David Sachs has given a rundown on Pompeo's idea of a Trump peace plan. He said on X, Pompeo's idea of a Trump peace plan for Ukraine is to give Zelensky a $500 billion shopping spree at the Pentagon to buy whatever weapons he wants, so that Zelensky can obtain the Tomahawks he's been asking for and strike Moscow. This is not a peace plan, it's a way to start World War III. Germany's government collapse and the Ukraine funding issue. The current situation is a minority rule. After dismissal of Finance Minister Christian Lindner by Chancellor Olaf Scholz, the Free Democrats FDP party withdrew from the coalition, leaving the Scholz government without a parliamentary majority. This has resulted in Germany being governed by a minority government composed of Social Democrats, SPD, and the Greens. The key events leading up to the collapse are 1. Debt brake law. Germany operates under constitutional debt brake, which limits the federal government's ability to borrow beyond a certain threshold. The financial support of Ukraine has stretched these limits. 2. Funding Ukraine. Scholz viewed the inability to fund Ukraine or reduce social spending as an emergency, arguing for an exception to the debt brake to allow more borrowing for Ukraine's support. Linder's refusal. The Finance Minister Linder, adhering to his oath to manage Germany's finances responsibly, refused to suspend the debt brake for this purpose, leading to a significant conflict. 3. The political fallout. The dismissal of Linder, Scholz sacked him for not agreeing to bypass the debt rules, which led to the FDP withdrawal. In response, the FDP left the coalition, causing its collapse. 4. Government operations. Scholz's move has begun appointing new ministers to fill vacancies left by the FDP's exit, aiming to continue governance despite the lack of majority. And the legal and political ambiguity. This raises questions about the legality and stability of decisions made under a minority government. 5. Call for elections. The opposition is demanding, primarily the conservative SDU, insists on new elections to resolve the political instability. The election timing. There's speculation that elections might be held in March 2025, though Scholz seeks to govern with opposition support in the interim. And what's the implications? The Western support for Ukraine. The situation in Germany highlighted broader issues within Europe regarding the sustainability of support for Ukraine amidst internal economic and political constraints. Political stability. The scenario questions the functionality of democracy when the government operates without a clear parliamentary majority, potentially setting a precedent on how minority governments might handle critical decisions. This situation underscores the significant political drama in Germany, reflecting tensions not only within its borders but also echoing broader geopolitical dynamics, especially with the changes in the US policy under the potential Trump administration. Let's listen to Sergeant Schultz.
We bring Ukraine closer to defensive combat. I am not prepared to finance our support for Ukraine and investment in our defense at the expense of social cohesion. Article 115 of the Basic Law expressly provides for a decision to exceed the limit in an extraordinary emergency situation. The Russian war of aggression and all its consequences are such an emergency situation.
In fact, the Chancellor has been given the ultimatum since this afternoon. I am obligated to suspend the debt brake of the Basic Law, but agreeing to this would violate my oath of office, which is something I could not do.
And the German Foreign Minister has stated that funds allocated to Ukraine were redirected from budgets intended for schools and daycare centres, as well as from modernisation projects for the German railway system, for instance. This redirection has led criticisms that President Zelensky has received funds without equivalent benefits for Germany, while German children and infrastructure are left underfunded. From a certain perspective, this could be seen as a betrayal of the German public interests. Let's listen to her.
In this challenging economic situation last year, the federal chancellor has already discussed defending the federal government back together. This cannot go on. Putin has also aimed to pit peace in Europe against cohesion in our societies, which is part of his strategy and can affect everyone. Reading the media means that in the situation where we have slipped more and more, we want and must support Ukraine in order to secure our peace. 37 billion euros, which were never provided for in the budget because we always wanted to live in peace, always had to be cut off in other areas, in social areas. These were painful decisions for us when we say, for example, we cannot continue to finance early childhood education in daycare centers and schools. Investments in our country had to be cut off. Volker Wissing, for example, my greatest respect, who finally wanted to modernize the railway. That is, the billions would chase billions at Wissing. I've always said that. My respect applies in good times and bad times, so I'm not making a populist distinction, but billions of investments. We wanted to modernize our country, and with every month of war, more we had to say, it's part of honesty. We can't do everything, and that's why we had a year ago. SPD and Greens proposed after the Constitutional Court said, we can't do this with this old special fund. We once had the 100 billion special fund, let's be honest now. Unfortunately, because Putin doesn't want it, this war will not end so quickly, go to an end. And we discussed this intensively last December. Christian Hinter said, no, I'll do it differently with you. He promised us that. If in the USA, if it is clear that support breaks away elsewhere, then we can talk about emergency land again. Then we have been talking about it all year. So, and at some point it was completely clear that it's not about him wanting a solution.
And Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko at the Wood Chopping Championships, which you'll see soon, recently shared his thoughts on the results of the US election. He had some surprising praise for both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Trump, of course, is powerful, Lukashenko said. No matter how I feel about him, he's a strong guy. They shot at him, tried to crush him, even wanted him to throw him in jail, but he pushed through like a bulldozer. This is his personal achievement for the American people. He also had some words for encouragement for Kamala Harris. Kamala is a heroic woman, and she shouldn't shed any tears. America is simply not ready to elect a woman as president. She went toe-to-toe with this bulldozer. She should not cry under the circumstances, Lukashenko emphasized. Interestingly, Lukashenko also commended the Democrats for their post-election behavior. He noted that despite their loss, they did not call on their supporters to protest or incite violence. They lost, and yet they chose to continue their work, he said. This is a good lesson for the entire world, including the opposition. It's a commendable example set by the Democratic Party. Lukashenko's comments seem to highlight, in contrast with his own critics, subtly implying that Belarusian opposition should take a page out of the Democrats' book when it comes to accepting defeat. Let's listen to him.
In Israel.
Gamma, you predicted his victory, and by the way, you also predicted it in the last election.
But Grump won, although I just guessed. I didn't make any wishes. It was hard to believe he could win. They shot Press 91. They wanted to charge him, however, but he passed like a bulldozer, passed after he had already worked, seemingly unsuccessfully. So this is his personal feat, although if you got his name out there to the American people, so he's good on that. Kamala is a heroic woman, and she doesn't need to cry. So I watched it today. I'm worried. I lost. Listen. America is ripe for a black president, but America is not ripe for a woman. America's not ready for this, and she went nose to nose with this bulldozer. She did everything possible and impossible. She's great, so under no circumstances can you cry, which is what I would like. Science is our run. No one is calling on anyone on the street. No one is calling on anyone to go to the authorities with a coil or an axe to fight. We have lost everything, please. We will continue to work. That's it. From the Democratic Party, a good example for the whole world. Here are 3 points so far I can deduct from this election. Well, the hope is that if Trump has to, and this is his deadline, as he said, the latter will not run again. He needs to put everything into not only making America great, then they will make it great, but in the interests of the whole world. If you claim leadership in the world.
And Lukashenko said if Trump manages to stop wars, we will nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. He needs to put everything in, not in only making America great, but let them make it great, but in interest for the whole world. If you are claiming leadership, he said. The head of the state recalled that Donald Trump, during his election campaign, promised to do everything to stop wars, and there are more than 50 conflicts in the world, including in Ukraine. If he does this, we will send a petition for the Nobel Prize. He will be awarded it for doing a good deed. There's also hope that he will keep his promises. But America is not Belarus. They can forget or something else. But we hope that he will keep his promise, the Belarusian leader said. At the same time, the president noted that not everything will depend on Donald Trump. As for the conflict in Ukraine, at least the participation of both parties to the conflict is necessary. He will try to stop the war in Ukraine, but this is not a one-sided process. This needs to be negotiated, and perhaps not only with Russia. This concerns many countries, the head of the state noted. Donald Trump also stated that he was ready to put China in its place. However, Alexander Lukashenko emphasized that such a person who can put China in its place has not yet been born. That's why we need to divide everything by 2, by 3. What you say today during an election campaign is not a fact that tomorrow the circumstances will turn out that way, the president added. If they want there to be peace and quiet here in Europe, we will continue to contribute to that. Let's listen to him.
His statement that he will do everything to stop wars, and there are 55 conflicts and wars in the world. We need to stop wars in Ukraine, the Middle East, Yemen, and so on. We must stop the war. If you do, then you and I will send a petition to this Nobel Prize. We will reward him for what he did. A good deed, and not as one of the presidents, and I give my last name, is also a strong man. I know him. He was immediately given the Nobel Prize won, so there is hope that he will fulfill his promises. But America is not Belarus. Here you can't keep your promise, so you'll get bored in 1 year, and there you can leave and forget something else. Well, we hope so. That he will fulfill his promise does not depend on him. Listen, I will stop the war in Ukraine 2004. Putin and I meet. I say, listen, you tell me how Trump will stop the war in Ukraine, Well, at least without you, but if there are two of us, it will be very difficult in general, so there is no need to make stupid statements. He will try to stop the war in Ukraine, but this is not a unilateral process. It must be negotiated, and perhaps not only with Russia. This applies to many countries. Then put TIE in place. China was not born. I put it in place. Very difficult, so we need to divide everything. As we say, by 2 by 3. What are you saying today? According to the election campaign, it is not a fact that the circumstances will turn out like this tomorrow. It is so in Gora's footsteps. But then we will see when the euphoria subsides, because Trump has great euphoria, because he is a hero. We must pay tribute. He heroically came of age. Look, since he says that he is already under 80, he is moving like a bulldozer and will spend the day at the rally. That's why he's a hero and deserves it. Strong, so that there is no complacency in love. That's me, he has it. No. Now, America and Kolva are leaders in the world. Don't forget about us, about the world as well.
And as we said, President Lukashenko is at the wood chopping championships and gives a masterclass on how to chop wood. Let's watch him chop wood.
Девчонки, я как деревенском подтверждаю, мамы обычно, они же отдавали замуж. И вот косили мужики, рубили дрова, а мать дочку подзывала, за этого пойдешь. Да. А что брать мужика, который пивко только умеет попивать? Вот. Поэтому есть у меня ученики. Семёныч, иди сюда. Видишь трещину?
И испытывали на МТЗ.
Давай. Не промахнись и не опозорься. Молодец. Вот сюда. Еще разок туда. И к себе. Все, не надо. Сбрасывать не надо. Теперь мы поворачиваем колодку и начинаем рубить по кусочкам. Видите? А не умел ничего. Ну, так, теперь доктор. Прошу вас, барьеру. Малая, вроде рубить не может. А смотрите,
одним ударом.
За 20 не надо ей это. Спокойно, а то ты меня зарубишь. Давай, вот. По кусочку пошла. Сильнее надо. Я тебе говорил разминаться. Вот, да. Дальше. Так.
Сама.
Во, малая, видите? Все могут. Паскал. Сюда, дорогой мой. А что ты думал? Иди народу показывай. Чтобы люди понимали, что возле меня нет бездельников. На, прицелься. Смотри в точку. Еще сильнее. Дальше попробую край. Еще сюда и развалится, если попадешь. Можно и туда. Сильнее чего ты? Еще сильнее. Вот, молодец. Хватит. Вот, понемножку поправь ее, а то упадет. Руби, руби, правильно, молодец. Молодец. У него, видите, суп там, поэтому... Внучка Владимира Ильича Ленина. Приемная президента, протокол президента вчерашний. Вот красавицы в конкурсе участвовали Мисс Беларусь. Ну, посмотрим. И начинай понемножку, секторально, ближе, прицелилась. Ух ты, давай, давай, сюда же. Теперь вы поняли, что у меня не забалуешь. Мисс Беларусь ты, не мисс, будешь рубить все равно. Молодец, отбрасывай. Так, Эйсман, покажи, что ты... Все, молодец. Иди. Нечего, тут у нас все одинаковое. Вот. Не трогай это, дальше руби. Давай, давай, за тебя. Сильней. Хорошо. И тот редкий случай, когда критика воздействует.
осталось.
Друзья, до финиша осталось совсем немного.
Сколько осталось колодок у команды по номеру 3?
Давайте договоримся, если ваша команда
Солигорск. Все сделали? Все сделали!
Сегодня день рождения у Синьхуа, у китайского агентства, которое у нас работает. Да. Вы им как раз помогли в честь праздника.
Вы и так молодцы сегодня. Да. Правда, белорусский китаец помог вам немножко, но ничего.
Спасибо вам огромное. И в этот день мы исполнились 93 года Синьхуа. Так что мы очень рады, что можем принять участие. На самом деле мы уже второй раз принимаем участие.
Я знаю, мне уже рассказали.
Да. В прошлом году мы заняли 32 место.
В этом году вы будете выше.
Да, сегодня я думаю, что мы будем стараться.
Это вам подарок к 93-летию.
Да, очень огромное. Спасибо вам большое, Александр.
And the drifting around Minsk keeps continuing, with the last place to record or video was at the international airport. Let's watch this.
Airport Minsk. Experience a truly unique world-class drift tour in Belarus.
This is a unique experience from which, in principle, I have not heard.
To be
Shooting. Who participated?
the whole country won. We all have a pleasant experience.
Astonished to have been part of such a significant event.
And the show's UAP update. The UFO was seen, or UAP was seen over Taiwan. Let's have a good look at this.
I'm unsure about what it could be.
Look at this!
Can you tell me what this is, Mom? Please don't speak now, Mom.
Don't talk yet. Mom, I won't give you any money if you don't say it. Mom, don't talk. What is this?
Where I'm going here? It's definitely a UFO.
September 11th, 2024, in China, at 7:40 p.m. at the international airport, was severely interrupted by an unidentified aerial objects which remained in the air for several hours, starting at 7:40 p.m. local time. The incident led to significant flight disruptions, with 29 flights delayed, 8 cancelled and 32 diverted to other airports, impacting over 3,000 passengers. Although official reports suggest that drones were the cause, the extended duration and the scale of disruption have raised doubts about the explanation. Standard consumer drones typically have a limited flight time, unlikely remaining airborne for so long. And there's a new documentary on Netflix called Investigation Alien. Check it out. And there's some latest photos from Jupiter, from the Juno space probe that's orbiting it. And have a look at the detail of this. Pretty awesome. And of course, we've got some insect news. You will eat the bugs and eat them and enjoy them. Here we go. Watch this. And the WEF's favourite psychopath, Yuval Noah Harari, when talks about artificial intelligence, he said, "This is the end of human history. Not the end of history, just the end of human-dominated history." I'm tending to think it more of in terms of an alien invasion with highly intelligent beings. They'll be here in 5 years and take over the planet. Maybe they'll be nice. Maybe they'll solve cancer and climate change. But we're not sure. This is what we are facing, except that the aliens are not coming from spaceships. They're coming from a laboratory. Let's listen to the psychopath.
It's the end of human history. Not the end of history, the end of human-dominated history. History will continue with somebody else in control. If it was a question of, humankind versus a common threat of these new intelligent alien agents here on Earth, then yes, I think that there are ways we can contain them. But if the humans are divided among themselves and are in an arms race, then it becomes almost impossible to contain this alien intelligence. And there is, I'm tending to think of it more in terms of really an alien invasion. That like somebody coming and telling us that, there is a fleet, an alien fleet of spaceships coming from planet Zircon or whatever, with highly intelligent beings. They'll be here in 5 years and take over the planet. Maybe they'll be nice. Maybe they'll solve cancer and climate change, but we are not sure. This is what we are facing, except that the aliens are not coming in spaceships from planet Zircon, they're coming from the laboratory. We can try to prevent them from having agency, but we know that they are going to be highly intelligent and at least potentially have agency. And this is a very, very frightening mix. Something we never confronted before. Again, atom bombs didn't have a potential for agency. Printing presses did not have a potential for agency. This thing, again, unless we contain it, and the problem of containing it is very difficult because potentially they'll be more intelligent than us. How do you prevent something more intelligent than you from developing the agency it has? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's very, very difficult.
And it's that time of the show. You don't see that in Belarus. Let's start off in the USA at a Walgreens as they're getting robbed.
This is video from the 9th and Market location in San Francisco at about 3:30 Saturday, where an employee says a group came in, ransacked the store, kicking, even prying open the plexiglass to get to merchandise, mostly body care and makeup. They then exit, at least one of them on scooter. About an hour earlier, the Walgreens at First and Mission was also hit.
Still in the US, a police chase, and watch this guy flip over a fence.
Other officers on the radio.
Crossing into the other lane right there, Sean.
Yes, he's on the opposite side. Well, he's come to a stop.
All right.
He's come to a stop. He's come to a stop. Doors open, and there he goes. It's a foot race. He's over the fence.
Over the fence.
He's over the fence. Did you see that?
Yeah, we did. And we got a vehicle in pursuit right there
cut him off
for the
path.
takedown. Yes.
And he's going to give it up. Hands up. He's going to drop to his knees here quickly, and he's going to lay it down. And they're going to help him lay down.
Still in the US, and a shoplifter is stopped leaving by security.
Get the fuck out my way! Get out my way! Get out my fucking way! Get the fuck out my way! Get out my way! Bro, get out my way! Yo, Asia, bro. Yo. Get out! Woo! What the fuck? Man, are you the man? Who the fuck were he? Somebody can take my bag. I want to go. I want to leave. Come on. Stop.
And of course you definitely don't see this in Belarus. And of course you don't see any of that in Belarus. None of it. Not at all. And that is the end of live show number 95. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We're going to have a special show this week, the Nubians, the 12th planet. It'll be a short one, so look out for that. And with only 5 to go for our 100th show, don't forget we'll be giving away to one of our subscribers 100 in their currency. So if you're in the US, you'll get $100 US. If you're in the UK, you'll get £100. If you're in the EU, you get €100. And if you're here in Belarus or in Russia, you'll get $100 US. All you need to do is be a subscriber on both Rumble and YouTube for at least 5 shows. So you better do that now. Prior to the 100th, and we'll randomly pick one of those subscribers out. And also we've decided to give 100 in currency on the night, and we'll have many in the studio guests and people that you've seen before coming in virtually to say hello. It'll be a little bit of a party in the studio. And also we'll be having a break before then, because we'll be moving the studio to a larger place, so I suppose it'll be like a studio warming as well. So we'll do all that, and we'll also be changing the look slightly. Thanks for tuning in, we appreciate it, and if you hit that thumbs up it would be great. Also please share the video near and wide and on your social media to help this channel grow. And if you haven't, please subscribe, especially if you want to win some money. And I hope you liked tonight's show, as I said. Thanks again, and see you on the next show. Bye.
It's wrong because it's like against society.